Thank you, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abhishek, and uh, we are going to today we are going to talk about the issue of data protection, data safety. So you can call it many names. So this series of e-dialogues is organized by All India Institute of Local Self-Government, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, and also Urban Update magazine. In this series, we are touching upon different topics, different issues that evolved during the pandemic. And one topic that we cannot ignore, that is of data protection, data safety, data security. Because most of our activities, whether we talk about meetings, whether we talk about our day-to-day official activities, they have gone online. We are sharing a lot of data digitally. So the question of data safety has arisen, and how the governments world over is handling the issue of data safety. Today we are joined by Mr. Vijay Shankar Nagaraj Rao, who is also popularly known as Naavi, is presently the executive chairman of Foundation of Data Protection Professionals of India. He is an information assurance consultant and has also been the founding director of Cyber Law College. He has been at the forefront of netizen movement in India. He is also the author of first book on cyber crimes in India named Cyber Laws for Every Netizen in India, and his latest publication is Personal Data Protection Act of India 2020, PDPA 2020. So welcome, sir, to this one-on-one discussion. And I'm very sure I can assure our audience that we are going to discuss a very important aspect of data safety and security, and you are going to get uh, critical analysis of how this ecosystem works and how you can make sure that your data is safe with the companies that you are sharing with. So, sir, we will start with this whole change in our day-to-day activities after this pandemic hit us in March 2020 this year. So most of our activities have gone online, whether we talk about our official meetings, we talk about our seminar, conferences, and like we are discussing today, this interview. So what has changed during this pandemic, and why we should be worried about this data safety at all?
Thank you, Mr. Pandey, and I'm glad to be with you to discuss one of the most passionate topics of which I have been pursuing for quite some time. Of course, you have asked a question whether after the pandemic, whether there has been some big change or something like that. And you are asking me, who 20 years back started Cyber Law College as a virtual educational institution. So what I feel is that the system of this virtual interaction has always been available to us. But perhaps the market did not find the need for it earlier because one, we always have a resistance to change. So if we are using to meeting across the table, we always prefer to do that. And people like us have traveled from say here to all the way to Delhi for half an hour or 20 minutes time in a conference. How much of expenditure people have spent and how much of time we have devoted, all that has now become redundant because I can be with you now for another half an hour, 1 hour. Next moment, I can be with somebody else. So, this advantage of the virtual media has always been there. We have been deficient in not recognizing its importance. Now, this pandemic, in a way, has forced us to think about this. So, what we sometimes refer to as a new normal is, to my mind, something which was always available. Only thing is, we fail to recognize its potential. So that way, I am quite happy with whatever has happened, and a large number of people have recognized its importance. People like us who have been training and teaching virtually or were prepared to do so. We didn't have the audience who were prepared. Audience would like us to come there all the way and spend the time. And even in a place like Bangalore, if I have to go to a company for 1 hour discussion, I have to set aside another 4 hours for my travel. Same way in perhaps Bombay and many other places. So I feel it is a welcome change. So let us welcome this change of virtual interaction. At the same time, it has brought the issues of information security, data security into the fore, which again is increasing. The concern is increasing basically because opportunities for criminals to exploit the situation has increased. Now, if Zoom was attacked because more number of people were on Zoom, therefore somebody felt it ideal to, let us say, hack into Zoom user data or something like that. So wherever opportunities have increased, so we sometimes say cyber crimes have increased during the pandemic. The reason probably is twofold. One is that the opportunities have increased because more number of people are on the digital media now. And secondly, people who were hitherto not well versed in digital usage suddenly came into it. For example, my older generation people went into, say, Amazon purchases and something like that, and they were seeing for the first time emails and SMS messages
Yeah.
about various, let us say, awards, that kind of a thing. And therefore, they were vulnerable. So, more vulnerable people went into the digital media and the opportunities increased. Except that, I feel we should all welcome this change and we should prepare the people to meet these challenges. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Very well noted that this change is welcome. We all welcome this change. And you have mentioned very good point that audience was not prepared. The speakers were prepared. They could deliver their lecture. So this pandemic has mentally prepared the audience for this kind of dialogues. My another question that now when we talk about data, we say data is new oil and everyone wants to control this data, and we have seen this discussion during these when this US elections are happening now. So we were seeing that there was a they was saying that China is controlling data, or the United States of America is controlling data of users sitting in India, Indonesia, China, or anywhere else. So this question of data safety and security is become very important globally also in terms of relation between countries. Like suppose a company is operating in India, but its server is in Canada or in USA. So how these countries are managing and ensuring that the data of their citizens is safe? Can you please enlighten us on this?
See, there are two aspects here. One is security of data, which means that data should not be modified unauthorizedly or denied access, that kind of a thing. Confidentiality is there. Second is, of course, see, data ultimately it's like money. Unless you use it, it is no use. You cannot keep all the data in your silo and say that I have got valuable data. It is only when data is used, it gets value. It's like cash that way. Okay. So we have to find channels of appropriate usage of data rather than preventing data being used. See, now we are talking of data in two major types. One is the personal data and other is the non-personal data. Now, uh, almost all the countries, about more than 100 countries today have got personal data protection acts. Okay, that is legislations. India, you know, is also working on the bill. We will soon join that particular bandwagon of countries having specific data protection laws. But of course, India already has Information Technology Act, certain uh, provisions. So personal data needs to be accorded some additional security as compared to non-personal data. Now, non-personal data has got a commercial value. That is why India is also planning to have a legislation for non-personal data governance. Okay, how to unlock the value of non-personal data. Now, personal data basically needs to be protected from misuse because our bank accounts are linked to personal data. Our health data is there, which can be misused if it falls into wrong hands. So, personal data needs to be protected. So, when we talk of this data moving across different countries, we still need to protect personal data in a manner in which it is not misused. Okay. Now, what is happening is in the dark web or in the international markets, people are acquiring this personal data for the purpose of using it against the individual. So when we say China is having the control of data, they are say Twitter or any other social media collects a lot of data. Now the concern is that data may be used against us on a later day. For example, you made a reference to the elections. So one fear is that any personal data may be used in such a manner that it can be used to manipulate our behavior. Okay, say capturing our behavior, profiling is yes activity which is more scientific. We have been doing that in the advertising industry also in the past. Say no advertisement is made without analyzing the target market. So market segmentation, psychographic profiling of the target audience is inherent in any business. In fact, if I'm talking to you, perhaps I will be talking in such a manner that you will be agreeing with me, kind of a thing. So it's a human tendency to try to understand the audience and try to regulate the information flow. This has been in existence in advertising and other industries. What we are worried about this Cambridge Analytica or other issues is that ultimately this was used to benefit one of the parties. Okay, it could have been the other party, then another set of people would have had objections. So as long as it is only profiling, understanding what you are, it is a kind of a less harmful use of personal data or behavioral analysis. But when I use it to play upon you and try to make you subservient to my interests, then there is an ethical issue there. Okay, should I leave it to you to have your own independent views, or I want to drag you into my political or racial views? So we have to make a distinction of understanding the audience by looking at the data and trying to manipulate them. Of course, whether we can make this distinction or not is a question. Okay, we may start by doing one thing and we end up doing the other. But personal data has this risk of being used both for crimes as well as for profiling, for further manipulation of the individuals. So people say that it hurts the democratic process itself, that if you can change the views of the voter. But you tell me that every election campaign, voters have to be wooed by the political parties. The difference is whether we are trying to woo them with real facts, truth, or we are trying to woo them with fake news. So the problem we have is not that of profiling, not that of advertising on the internet, but our inability to control fake news. Okay, if we are able to control fake news, if we are able to reduce the number of fake accounts in Twitter, then we don't have to worry about positive views. See, I may support one party, you may support another party, that doesn't matter. Okay, we can still be friends. And of course, if we are friends and we will be arguing sometimes that my view is correct, your view is correct, and that is also fine. I don't think there is a big issue. But if I assume a particular name, a pseudonymous name, and try to say that this is the view of somebody else, and that somebody else is perhaps, let us say, known to you, and his views are important to you, then I am trying to manipulate you. So fake news, fake identities on social media, they are the problems which we in the privacy area are only grasping now. Okay, now say Information Technology Act has tried to bring amendments to the Section 79, which is the intermediary guidelines, where we try to address the need to, let us say, track the origination of a WhatsApp message and then try to introduce intermediary guidelines, etc. At the same time, in the privacy law, in our personal data protection bill, we have introduced a provision that on social media, we would like people to be verified for their identity, okay, voluntarily. Of course, PDPB doesn't say it should be mandatory, but it has made a proposition that verified identity should be there in the social media platforms. The platforms will have to make it possible technically, and it is left to the individual. If I want to make my Twitter account say Vijay Shankar Nagaraj Rao, you have to do that. Okay.
Okay.
I cannot use somebody else's name. Of course, presently the bill doesn't prohibit it. If somebody wants to use a pseudonym, it is still possible. But at least more number of people would like to express their words or views in their real name. I say, if I am not committed to what I am saying, why should I say that? Okay, if I'm committed, I have to say that, and this is the kind of, this is what we should encourage in democracy. That is, we are not trying to curb opposing views, but the person who is opposing should be able to identify and say, I am so and so, and I'm opposing your view. Okay, so that is the issue in this data being transferred from one country to another country, or being used for purposes like political campaigning and other things. If we understand this, many of our concerns on this data protection will get resolved.
Sir, my question, another question is that when you are talking about the control over data from one country, transfer of data from one country to another, we have seen this manipulation online. You have given some example like Cambridge Analytica and other cases where it was used to for behavioral profiling of users and other things. So my question is, I was reading somewhere that we are using a lot of free services online. Facebook is free, WhatsApp is free, YouTube is free, Google is free. So there was a one saying that when you're not paying for a product, then you are a product. So it means that the users are the product. Their data is captured, their profiling is done to sell them products or services. And one more example, that personal experience we had, we one of our friends and colleagues in offices were discussing about a particular product, and of course everyone is having access to mobile phones. I don't know, it was a coincidence or it was I want to know your point of view on this, okay, how this profiling is done, and how we are living in a secure world. We were discussing about a product, and after some time when I was using my social media, I started getting ads, similar ads, I mean, of that product only. So I was confused. I did not type anything on my computer. I did not use any keyword. I was just discussing with friends with maybe my phone's lying near me. So what kind of this profiling is, and how secure, reliable, accountable this kind of profiling is?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not sure whether your mobile was listening to you when you were discussing. Of course,
Yeah.
we say that there are malware which can do that, but that might not have happened in your case. But if you have visited, say, Amazon to buy some products just to explore,
But that happens.
yeah, or go
That
to
but
a website.
that was very startling and surprising, because I did not type anything. I was very sure that I did not. I try to remember. I did not type anything, and I was just having my phone with me. And how?
Were you conversing with anybody on the mobile about your interests or products? No.
Sorry?
Were you talking to anybody?
No, no,
No.
not over phone.
Okay,
My
so
phone was like.
let us assume that okay, there is no malware in your mobile which silently listens. You know, there are such malwares. Okay, and people use it for spying um, against political opponents and political leaders and others. And sometimes, if it is there in the mobile, we will not be able to see it in the app store. Okay, that will be hidden. And even if you perhaps reformat the mobile to factory settings, they may still survive. So there are such kind of malware. And if that is there in your mobile, please try to do something.
Okay.
Okay, other
Okay.
than that, the way profiling is done is to look at let us say your Facebook profile or something of that nature. If you send emails, Google will definitely look into it. You see, in fact, for a long time, Google and even Yahoo or the mail at the one point of time, they used to actually scan the emails for identifying, let us say, today we are talking of hate speech. At that time, it was whether .exe file is attached or something like that. Malware was only concern. Now, today we have got more concerns. Okay. So they were scanning the entire email. In fact, that is why when you open a Google email, the advertisements which come in the bottom may have relation to the content. Now, if Google doesn't know what is the content, obviously they cannot show the advertisements. So anything which is there, that is easy prey. Okay, you agree with that. But you are talking of something very different, which without typing or anything which is that, which I don't know whether you should look at yesterday's activities you had, maybe with that had any such indications. Otherwise, it is little strange. Maybe you have to check your mobile to see whether there is a uh, malware. But this kind of analysis, um, say, for example, today you have seen in the press that one company called True Indology or something like that was banned from Quora because of some message. The artificial intelligence bots, sometimes they make mistakes. Okay, they don't understand the content in its real, you can say, context. Okay, if I say, let us say, Muslim, doesn't mean that I am always criticizing Muslim or something like that. So artificial intelligence sometimes makes mistakes. So um, that's what we saw in the Quora case, and it can happen elsewhere also. So all these advertising analysis, behavior analysis is done today by AI. It is not humanly done, except
Yeah.
that companies may have to actually have supervision, human supervision over what AI does before taking extreme decisions like banning a person or something of that nature. Flagging is different. See, flagging a content as potential, say, whether it is yeah, inappropriate content. I would like to use the word inappropriate content more than hate speech or something like that, because only when you read it, you will know whether it is hate speech or not. Until that time, the machine can only say it's like a potential inappropriate content. That can be flagged. There is no difficulty in just flagging a particular this thing, but taking it out, banning is something which is an extreme step, which the media, social media is trying to adopt, which is, I think, not understanding the security environment properly and misapplying the security features. Okay.
So these are the points that you have mentioned, that profiling, and then this inappropriate flagging of messages that we are sending online. So my question to you is that now India is trying to build 100 smart cities. And then when we talk about smart cities, we are not just referring to improving basic civic services. We are also trying uh, to embed digital technology, whether we talk about smart cameras where your vehicle number plate is recognized and can be tracked, or the facial recognition systems. So when we are entering into that kind of ecosystem in cities, and the data is stored with the smart city offices, those are not well trained and equipped to deal with data. So how do you see this challenge for the municipalities which don't have that kind of technical capacity to handle data, to secure the data, and should users be concerned?
See, users should be concerned because the people who are collecting the data are not having appropriate security measures to ensure that it doesn't leak out or something like that. Okay. See, cameras will simply capture the image. Okay. The interpretation of what the camera has captured happens in the back end. Okay. So what the camera captures is a de-identified information in a way, or anonymous information, but the anonymous information gets, let's say, identified because the person sitting behind the camera can identify, oh, this person is so and so, that person is Amitabh Bachchan. He can identify. So this identification happens because of the human intelligence which peruses the data, unless you have made an artificial intelligence robot which actually does face recognition and then tries to link it. Smart cities, unless it is a crime kind of a situation, doesn't use or need not use face recognition as part of the collection. See, I would like to have cameras for traffic management, let us say. Now, that I don't have to see who is the person sitting inside the car as far as I know that a car is going in this. So basic smart city software need not necessarily be intrusive to I mean break the privacy of an individual. And when there is a certain incident for which, let's say, law enforcement has to monitor the movement, then that should be an exceptional situation where not the normal constable who is sitting behind the camera, who is looking at this, who should have that capability of looking at the face recognition combined with this document, this one, or plate being read. See, that is a separate software. So the processing has to be divided into two levels. First level, traffic management. The traffic cop will not know who is there or which car is there. He will just monitor the traffic. Okay. Whereas if there is a police have asked you to track a particular car or something like that, then it is not the constable who should have the power to do it. There should be a higher level officer with greater responsibility. He will run that identification software in his machine that will identify the number plate, and then perhaps this identifiable personal information is available only to that category of person who is authorized by law and who is required by law to know that. So if we understand that technology can segregate the information into these different levels, then some of the concerns which we have will not be there. But today, if technology people have one omnibus solution and it does everything, it takes the picture, it has the face recognition ID, so that you can just plug in another this thing there, then there is a that is actually a technology implementation failure. You can always, for example, when this traffic cop is looking at it, I can even obliterate the face itself. Even if I see a person, I can see a person walking from here to there, but I don't have to see the face. Okay, my software itself can obliterate the face. If it can do face recognition, it can also do face obfuscation. Okay, so I would let the software people develop that kind of multi-layered software solutions. One meant for the traffic cop, second meant for a law enforcement person, maybe a third one for NIA. Okay, I would give a lot more resolution and other things for NIA, but I will not give the NIA kind of access to the traffic police or vice versa. Now, that has to be managed. That is, having created a system like that, it is quite possible that somebody will get the NIA person's password and go to the database and try to take the information. Those are aberrations which happen because of security failure. Okay, so implementation of any technology solutions is possible without adversely affecting the privacy or security. It requires some innovative thinking. Okay, the pure technology people cannot do this because they don't see beyond the functionality. Okay, only the techno legal people who understand technology and also understand the law, they can tell the technology person it is a good functionality, but I don't want this functionality to be given to this person at this level. Okay, let me separate this. Okay.
So, my question is, when all these smart cities, we are talking about capacity building of our municipal staff, because most of these smart city people, some are private and some are from the existing system. So how do you propose to improve their understanding and knowledge of this technological system?
Say this new technology as well as the new law which is coming, every person has to be aware. There is no doubt about that. And when PDPP comes, the biggest problem will be in the government segment, because private sector, at least people have some idea about data protection. But government sector, they don't even know what is data protection. So a lot of awareness has to be built. But what I am saying is technology control, so that anonymized information should be made available to the larger part of the municipal staff, because for their functionality, anonymized information is sufficient. For example, you are talking about statistical department. They want to know how many births and how many deaths. They don't need to know the name of the person, parents, and other things. They want perhaps only a gender or something like that. So many people are born today, so many people died today, kind of a thing.
One example of this is like in America, they introduced this technology of tracking people's movement from one place to another. And they tracked it for 2 years. And after that tracking, they realized that so many people are going from this location to that location. So they need housing in that particular area.
Correct.
So housing policy based on big data, that was I think first of its kind in that happened in one of these cities in America. So these kind of anonymous data can be shared with the municipal staff and those people. Now I will come to the very important subject that you are already working on, this PDPA. Can you explain this bill and the act to in the layman terms to our audience? What is this all about and how it is going to change this whole ecosystem?
See, presently we were working under the regime of Information Technology Act, okay, which said that if data is misused, there will be a punishment. That is a cyber crime law. Okay, so if you hack into somebody's information, you are liable under that. Now, what this Information Technology Act had was that the intermediaries or the companies who are in possession of this personal information need to take certain precautions to ensure that hacking doesn't take place, ensure that the compromise doesn't take place. This was the section 43 capital A of Information Technology Act. But unfortunately, Information Technology Act did not have adequate deterrents. There was no monitoring authority. So it was there in the law, but nobody was following it. So worldwide, after say particularly the GDPR, there was a kind of a focus on personal data to be protected in a particular manner. So our Personal Data Protection Act has followed that global trend where we are introducing certain proactive measures to be taken up by the companies in order to reduce the risk of privacy loss. Okay, this was also necessary because the Puttaswamy judgment, Supreme Court said that privacy is a fundamental right of an Indian person, and privacy can be infringed if the information about a person, which we call as personal information, is not regulated. That is, basically, we want an individual to have the choice. See, I have to decide how much of my personal information I give to you and how much I authorize you to use it, how much you can send it to your friends or something like that. So, use and disclosure of personal information should be at the choice of the data subject. It is the principle of data protection, and that is also supposed to protect the privacy. Say we are trying to protect the privacy through data protection. Okay, so Indian Act also has adopted the same principle. So what it has said is, before you collect any personal information, try to get the consent. uh, Ask him whether I can collect your information, and while asking, tell him what you are collecting, how you want to use it, and after giving that information, tell him, please permit me to collect your information and use it in this particular manner. So it's a consent based collection of personal information, which is the key to this Personal Data Protection Act. Having collected it, if I don't do what I have agreed to do in the consent form, certain rights are given to the data subjects, saying that you can find out what I am doing. This is called right to access. You, if I have got a wrong information, you can ask me to correct it, right to correction. In the ultimate situation, you can always tell me that I want to stop the use of my personal information and you have to delete it. So certain rights are given to the data subject, that after having allowed the collection of the information, I can check whether you are doing it properly or I want to change. So that is the rights. One is the consent based processing, and second is the rights. Third most important thing is that the organizations have been told that without anybody asking you to do or not do, you have to follow a certain compliance measure. Now, you have to protect the information in a particular manner. You have to appoint a separate person called data protection officer, and you have to submit a statement to the data protection authority who will be appointed, giving a plan of action of how you plan to process the data, which is called privacy by design policy. So like in the case of public issues, now before you want to go for a public issue IPO, you have to submit a prospectus to the SEBI, is it not? That SEBI will show to all the investors, please give money to this company, they want to use it in a particular manner. Indian Act has adopted a similar principle for collecting data. Before you collect personal data, please show the purpose of that through a privacy by design policy, which is registered with the Data Protection Authority. And in some cases, separate data protection impact assessment has to be done and share it with the DPA. So some precautions are initiated so that data is processed in a manner which is in the interest of the data subject. We call this person as data principal, and we call this processor as a data fiduciary. We actually hold him as a trustee of data uh, of the individual. And we also have a data breach notification aspects. Yeah.
Mentioned about the SEBI and the IPO thing of the stock market. So maybe we can look forward to having some kind of a rating system for the organization those are collecting data. Like all these institutions, they give credit rating to companies, and then investors decide that they
It
want
is
to
already
invest in.
there. Say in PDPB already has got something called DTS system, that is called Data Trust Score. Okay, so every organization which is audited by a data auditor, which is mandatory once in a year, like your statutory financial audit, the auditor has to provide what is called a DTS for the particular company. Now that is the credit rating. So just as a credit rating, this is a DTS actually rates a company as to its capability for protecting personal data. So of course, that is what the auditor will interpret. If I am interpreting a particular company, I will say you have implemented so many measures. I think that you have to get this much of score. So the point you raised has already been taken into account. That is an innovation which is there in Indian PDPB. It is not there in GDPR. There are several things PDPB has got which is not there in GDPR. This is one such thing.
That's very nice. I think everyone will be looking forward to this bill. I think recently also that the issue of Amazon not meeting this joint parliamentary committee, Meenakshi Lekhi has made that statement. I think there was some miscommunication as Amazon was saying. But my question is that my last question to you, because we have talked about policy, we have talked about how this government system is going to handle data and what they can do to make things better for citizens and data protection. My question is that how users should behave online and what precaution they should take, because that is very important question. I think most of our people, those are watching us right now, they will be interested in knowing what precaution they should take.
Say law will state that any person, any company taking your data should seek your permission, and that permission should be an informed consent. That is, he has to inform in detail and then obtain the consent. Now, how practically it translates is that before you are in a situation where you are submitting the personal information, there will be a consent form which has to be given to you. Sometimes it comes in the form of a privacy policy. Okay, so when you are downloading an app, people will ask, will say display the privacy policy and you have to accept it or something like that. But the point many people miss is that when you accept a privacy policy of an organization, that contains permissions of how my data is being used. In mobiles, we have got these permissions, okay? Permission to read an SMS, permission to take a photograph, something like that. So most of the time, the problem will be that an organization collecting the information collects more information than what is necessary for the particular service. Law actually prohibits that. Now, at present, there was no monitoring authority. Tomorrow, if any company gives a privacy policy saying that I am collecting it for this particular purpose and gives a list of permissions required, which is in excess of the purpose for which it is required. Now, if this is brought to the notice of the DPA, Data Protection Authority, or by way of complaint or something like that, or the Data Protection Authority out of its own say audit system finds it out, they can penalize this organization heavily. So okay, the fines can extend up to 4% of their turnover or up to 15 crores of rupees. So at least law makes that provision. Now, how it will be implemented? Some people will have to complain. If they feel they have a problem, they have to complain. Law has also made another provision. Knowing that India has a problem where there are a lot of uneducated persons using it, they have provided for an authority, say, a service called consent manager. So some people may say, I will become a consent manager so that people can use my services. When they download apps, you don't know whether the app really requires this permission or not, because you are not, perhaps, let us say, well versed in technology. So but I am perhaps capable of doing it. So there is a system called consent manager who will act as an intermediary between the data fiduciary who collects the information and this data principal who gives the information, to bridge any gap of knowledge or expertise. And also language issues. You say privacy policies, they are in English, and will it be acceptable to people in the rural areas? Obviously, it will not be. Okay, there is no way that you can convey everything you want to do in the local dialects and other things. But this, again, that is why PDPB is an innovative method, because consent manager is also not envisaged in GDPR and other things. It is specifically in the Indian context. So an individual who does not want to take the risk, instead of directly downloading the apps and other things, they can use the services of a consent manager, who will be, when you want to download an app and that person asks name, address, etc., there should be a button which uh, directs him to the consent manager, and consent manager will provide the information. This is more like Aadhaar now has got this virtual Aadhaar ID. So the law provides for the consent manager creating a sort of a pseudonymous identity uh, in such a manner that privacy is protected, but the purpose for which the information is required is also carried out. There is no legal infringement, and if the law enforcement wants to know who is the pseudonymous person, the intermediary can provide that. So there is a beautiful system which has been thought of in the PDPB in the form of consent manager. I hope that will address most of the concerns which you have got. So individuals have to look for such consent managers, and business people have to set up consent managers and tell people that please become my member. I will give you this special service. It is like in copyright, you have got copyright societies, no? This is something similar to that. I think that is what people should understand and use the services when it is available. Then some of the concerns will be addressed.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insight on data privacy and how this is going to change after that this PDPA is introduced. There are many provisions, as you told, that will benefit online users in India. And I'm very sure that users will also learn more about the importance of their data and how they are going to share as the time pass by. But the major challenge still is that internet penetration is going up, but the awareness of how to use internet should also go up. I think that start with happen with the government employees, that the people those are going to manage the data of the people, they should also understand how to protect, and they should also be accountable when this anything, any leak or happens. So thank you very much, sir, for giving your insight on this subject. And thank you everyone for joining us for this one-on-one interaction. We will meet you next week on the same time. Thank you so much till then.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.